models and patterns that you don't even see. I want to share with you some ways you can learn to take control of some of those patterns and learn to think smarter and make better decisions. Back in 1995, we needed to move from Ohio to upstate New York. Now, we had 4 small children at the time, so we needed to buy a house. We made several trips to New York looking for a house, and we could not find a house that we could agree on. So we needed a collaborative work culture to make this decision. One thing that amazed me was how the human brain can be so easily fooled by something as simple as sitting on a train. So you're sitting on a train and you see another train move out the window. Now your eyes tell you the train is moving. But wait, your brain thinks it knows better. And your brain has a model that says, large objects outside windows don't move. So it overrules your actual observation and tells you, you must be moving, grab hold of the seat because your train is moving. And you do, you grab hold of the seat until you realize your mistake. You see, these patterns operate subconsciously without us even seeing them. But they control so much of our behavior and our thinking. It's quite phenomenal. Humans do learn by recognizing patterns and constructing models of how the world works in their head. For example, children, like my 2 grandsons here, learn to speak and communicate by watching and listening to patterns of language and building models in their head of how that language works. They learn to speak a mother tongue by age 3, 4 without ever going to school. They also learn how to extrapolate patterns they have learned into new situations and test them. This gives them the ability to manipulate their parents. Watch this. Mommy, why do I have to go to bed? If you don't, you will wake up grumpy tomorrow. Child, is that why you are grumpy today? So we don't like it when the children extrapolate. We're trying to teach them and turn it on to ourselves, but they do. Okay, in the 1930s, some research was done by building a pair of glasses that made the image reaching your optical nerve upside down. So if you wore these goggles, you would see the entire world upside down. But an amazing thing happened. After a few days, the brain reinterpreted the message and turned the world back right side up. However, when the person took the goggles off, they saw the world upside down. And it again took a few days for the brain to let go of the model it had, which said the world is upside down, before it would shift back and allow you to see it right side up. See, the brain constructs models of what the world is like, and it tries to tell you how to operate. And you never see them. They're all operating in the back of our heads. And it fiercely holds on to those models and only relinquishes them when we have some major failure, or that's like the man with the glasses bumping into things, right? So, for example, we've all, I'm sure, had an experience of bumping into a glass door. Our model of what was a door, what a door should look like, we have, but we got confused. Perhaps the glass's transparency made us confused, and you misinterpreted what was the door, and you bumped into it. The good thing about bumping into a glass door, you get immediate feedback. But many decisions we make in life, we don't get feedback. We don't know how those subconscious models may have influenced our decision because we don't know what the outcome might have been. For example, someone does a gut decision to say you're fired or you're hired. When do you get the feedback to know if that was the right decision or not? Maybe later, maybe never. And even if you get feedback later, you've had time to post-decision justify your decision, and you've probably rationalized it all anyway, something us humans are very good at. But to be fair to our brains, and I realize that I'm using my brain to talk about my brain. There is some irony in that. But to be fair to our brains, they're very good at pattern recognition. Very good at it. That's why we use things like these letter combinations to try to fool computers, to separate the humans from the computer. Because humans are better at this than computers. We probably don't need to fear AI as much as we think we do because we have a competitive advantage, the ability to recognize patterns. Here's a great example. This is NASA's Citizen Science website. You can go there and volunteer your brain's power to recognize patterns by helping NASA find exoplanets, galaxies, star formations, all kinds of things that are hidden in space images. NASA does this because humans find them better and faster than computers do. Our ability is very strong. We also are good at drawing models for like business. So a vision we have in our head for some new concept, some new business, we're good at drawing like this little model for eBay. This is useful because if you're trying to get an investor to give you money, it's helpful if you can help them see the vision you have in your head. In fact, when we say we understand something, usually we say, "Oh, I see what you're talking about." Why do we say that? Because I've begun to see the pattern or the model that you had in your head that you're trying to convince me of. Why don't we just draw it in the first place? Instead of talking for an hour and then saying, "Let me show you," and digging it out. Of course, investors, this is good. This brings us to a man named Joseph Novak. He was a former professor at Cornell, and he taught conceptual learning with education and students. He wrote some books. What he learned and what he taught us is, in teaching children to make concept maps for learning, it works and helps them learn because making a map parallels the way your brain builds models. And so when you make a model, for example, of a water cycle, using concepts and diagrams, you're actually paralleling the way the brain relates those concepts and understands how they relate one to another. And that helps your brain to learn. This is a small aside, but there's mind maps that are made by the late Mr. Tony Buzan, who taught for many years. Those are a wonderful way to learn about who you are. They're something different than what I'm talking about today. So the way these models work is like this. What is 2 plus 5? Well, so when you get some stimulation to your brain, the first thing it does is look to see if this is a known pattern or routine or model that I can use to solve this easily. So 2 plus 5, your brain says, "I know the answer, I don't have to think about it, that's not a problem." The answer is 7. But what about when you get something like 2.1 plus 5.3? Now your brain has to do a little adjustment. And if it can fix the input to fit some input that it already knows how to work with, then I can easily solve the problem and say it's 7, and the world can move on quickly. It's convenient. It's very easy to get by and to do. This is in part what happened with the Space Shuttle Challenger and Columbia accidents. People got used to using nearby numbers as good enough because it was convenient. Soon, O-ring damage, foam strikes on the shuttle became normalized until a major disaster happened. Carl White talks about this as sense-making. We post-rationalize everything to make it make sense for our decisions, and we lose track of what we're actually trying to do at the time. It may be hard to understand why people as smart as those at NASA could make decisions that in hindsight look like poor decisions. But we have to go and look at the models they were using to make the decision. And unfortunately, we often use the same model we made the decision with to evaluate or analyze what we did, which means we come up with the conclusion that it's not my fault. In other words, nothing for me to learn. This is true for situations including things like Bhopal gas disaster. Many disasters in the world, we don't really learn as much as we need to because we don't have the ability to see the models we used to make those decisions. But the good news is, we can see those models. We can work to make them visible so that we can learn from them. So, what can you do with this? Well, I want to give you 3 very practical things you can do that will help you learn, grow smarter, and make better decisions. They're here. First, you can communicate your visions in models. I use this 10 bubbles, maximum of 10 bubbles, connect them, and show me how a business works. I require all my MBA students, Indian School of Business, Master's Unit, other places, to practice making a model like this with 10 concepts. Show me the essence of what this business is about. And you can communicate it much faster. Second, listen to others. As they describe things they see, you can help other people. And the way you do this is draw a map of what they're saying while they're saying it. So people would come to my office when I worked in this, and often they would have something to complain about. So one day this guy comes to my office, and he sits down, and I said, fine. I take a piece of paper. What do you want to talk about? He says this, my boss is an idiot. So I wrote that down. He said, well, why did you write that down? I said, that's what you said. I just wrote down what you said. He goes, no. I'm like, okay. So I crossed it off. What do you want to talk about? Here's the important thing. Because I was writing down what he said, he knew I was actually listening to him. So he said some other things. I'm having trouble at work. I feel like I'm not being fairly treated. I listened to him for a while and I mapped out what he had to say. But the benefit was, once he knew I was actually listening, then he told me what was really on his mind. And you can help people tremendously this way. So the third way is to visualize your own mental models in a collaborative workspace. Don't we all want a collaborative workspace, a collaborative work culture? So going back to the beginning, I mentioned that my wife and I were looking to find a house, and we needed to move to New York. So we'd made several unsuccessful trips. Finally, we sat down and I said, we need to create a collaborative environment to make this decision. We're not finding a house. So I gave her a piece of paper, I got a piece of paper, and we made a map of how I see what a house is. So I had a map of my house. Now, unfortunately, we actually had 2 maps, right? Because we had her house and my house, so his and hers. And if you look carefully, you realize there's not much in common. So it became very obvious to us why we couldn't find a house, because we were looking for 2 different houses. So we needed to sit down, and we did, and we created one map, one vision, one concept of what our house would be, because the assumption was we wanted to live in the same house together. So after we made this map, we went back to New York, and we were able to find a house very easily. So what I want to leave with you is you can do better by helping yourself and others visualize your own thinking models, become more aware of them, improve them, learn from the decisions you made, and hopefully enjoy a lifelong learning life. Thank you.